Chapter 33. Love. Cleo and Prince sat in her parlor at the Hoffman house. They had just breakfasted there, and the hour was 11. On the center table, among books, bijouterie, bonbons, etc., lay a parcel of billets doux, many of them open, some remaining in envelopes. All the latter being superscribed either Juan Mendez, Hoffman House, or Don Juan, same house. Cleo had brought these out this morning for the delectation of her friend, who had perused many of them, to his infinite amusement. There were scores of them, reader, and they were all love letters. Some plain, blunt effusions that went right to the mark at once, without any wasting of ink and sickly sentimentalism. Some were evidently from the circles of the demi-monde, but the greater portion were from the respectable quarters, even to the most select circles of the beau monde, and all breathed love. Delicately and deliciously, or more decidedly and demonstratively. "Well, Hal," said Cleo, who was smoking a cigarette, and had in her left hand 2 open billets of pink and violet tints. "What do you think of them?" "Exceedingly rich, some of them," returned Prince, laughing, looking up from a love epistle he was then perusing. "Jolly, aren't they, Hal? How nice it must be to be a man, and have 4 or 5 of these things a day come to this hotel. Do you ever have any, Hal? You needn't answer, though. Here are 2 from 2 girls I know, one rather gay, the other a prude of the first water, and one of Mrs. Grundy's slaves. Just listen while I read her epistle. Dear Sir, I wish I dared call you Dear Juan. You will not be surprised at receiving this note from a stranger, as you must be in receipt of many such daily. Such beauty as yours must call them forth by hundreds from the sex which can but admire, having once seen you. It cannot be possible that I am the only one that has written you, as I know your admirers to be legion, and I am satisfied that some of them must be bolder than I, who am not considered very forward in matters relating to social intercourse with the opposite sex, and never did such a thing before in my life, as to write to a strange gentleman, especially in such a strain as this. But, my dear Juan, there, I have done it, and I don't care, I mean it. My admiration, my love, that is the word, got the better of my diffidence, or discretion, if you will, and I determined to write you, and furthermore, to ask you to meet me. My, what would Mother say if she knew it? I don't care, dear Juan. I want to see you, must see you, and beg of you not refuse to meet me, as I am dying, absolutely dying, dear Juan, to hear your splendid voice and sweet converse, your silvery laugh and gay accompaniment, to look, all alone, upon your beautiful face, and into the depths of your velvety, magnificent eyes. Oh, what bliss! You can see that I am in love, deeply, dearly, and, let me say it, desperately in love with you, dear Juan. But, oh, I fear that there are so many in love with you, that for me, who don't even know how to write a love letter, will be crowded to the wall. Let me say that I am young, am called pretty, and belong to a first-rate family, so you need to not fear to see me as you might some feminines. I shall be in Madison Square Park tomorrow afternoon at 4 o'clock, and when a lady bows to you, you will come, won't you, dear darling Juan? And drops her handkerchief at the time, you will know it is me. Loving you dearly, and hoping greatly to see you tomorrow, I remain yours most devotedly, F.S. P.S. Don't disappoint me, dear darling Don Juan. You see I know your sobriquet. If you do, I shall die. I know I shall. Concluding, Cleo gave vent to a gush of laughter, and then of her companion asked, "What do you think of that, Hal? Considering from whence it came, it is too funny for anything," was her supplementary remark. "I hope you didn't let the poor thing die, after warming up from the cold, 'Dear Sir,' to the fervent, 'Dear darling Don Juan,'" returned Prince, laughing quietly. "Rest assured I did not, Hal. The more as I half suspected to whom the initials belonged," returned Cleo, laughing gaily. "And your suspicions were well-founded. I met her in Madison Square. You needn't inquire who, as I shan't tell you yet. And before we parted, well, what do you think?" A silvery peal of laughter rung from the lips of the gay beauty as she asked the question, and thought of the meeting with her admirer. "Oh, I wouldn't be surprised if you then and there proposed." "Not a bit," returned Prince quietly. "You've hit it exactly, Hal. Made love from the start, and my suit prospered. Acknowledged myself her captive, and begged that the bonds of wedlock might bind me to her forever, and, Barkis was willin', eh? Interjected Prince. Willing? She didn't even refer me to Pa, but accepted me on the spot. To all appearances, she was the happiest woman in New York when we parted, and I know I was the woman most pleased. It's the jolliest affair I've had, not excepting that Staten Island episode, and the denouement will be nuts for me. And she... Won't she wilt when she knows to whom she plighted her troth? Oh, it's too funny for anything, Hal. But hear this other. Short and sweet this is, if not sharp and decisive. Saying this, Cleo proceeded to read it from the other missive in her hand as follows. Dear Dawn, I am in love with you. Dead in love. Your beauty has chained me a captive to your chariot, and you can drag me where you please. I care not where, so that you will smile on me. I am handsome. It would be worse than affectation for me to say otherwise. A blonde, 22, move in good society, and have a respectable fortune in my own right. Will you meet me Wednesday at 5 p.m. on 23rd Street, North Side between 5th and 6th Avenues? I shall expect you to be there, my beautiful Don Juan. I admire the name, and, believing you will not disappoint me, I remain, yours most lovingly, Clara B. P.S. Don't fail, sweet Don Juan. Saw your captive, I suppose? Said Prince interrogatively, as Cleo finished. Of course I did, laughingly responded Cleo. I've seen a dozen or more of the writers of those scores of notes. How could I refuse their plaintive appeals? And am engaged to 11, all told. There were 2 or 3 to whom I declined to offer myself, on account of their being, as 2 acknowledged, married already, and entangling alliances of that sort I would avoid. Clara is mine, however. I know her. Well, here's one signed May Myrtle, which is red hot, said Prince. I don't see how you are going to escape her. 'Pon my soul, I don't. There's no mistaking her words in the least. She says, she loves you with a passion whose raging only death can quench, declaring that death will ensue unless possession of you alleviates the consuming flame, and swearing to follow you to the ends of the earth, giving you the coup de grace at last, if you decline to reciprocate, or at least yield to her desires. Now you see what this masquerade has brought you to, don't you? The pursuit of a woman relentless in her love, who, unless you are condescending and accommodating, if not loving, will... Cut me off in the flower of my youth, interposed Cleo, laughing gaily. Yes, she continued. May is on the warpath of love, poor thing. She's got it bad. I haven't seen her yet, but she's clever, isn't she? Inasmuch as she says she doesn't ask me to marry her, but only asks... Chapter 34. Wooed. A knock at the door arrested Cleo at this juncture, calling out, Come in, at which a waiter appeared, bearing a card which he presented to her. She glanced at the card, from it to Prince, from him to the waiter, then said to the latter, Show Mr. Marvin up, the waiter departing. Get into the other room, Hal. Leave the door open, she immediately said to her friend. I don't know Mr. Marvin, and don't know what to think of this. There may be some fun on the tapis. Prince stepped into an adjoining room, one of a suite of 3 occupied by Cleo, as there came a knock at the door. Come in, said our heroine, lighting a cigarette as she spoke. A young fellow, dark, handsome, and well got up, but with an ill-at-ease air, was ushered into the apartment. Bowing to Cleo, he stood for a moment, as if at a loss what next to do. In fact, he did nothing but stare most eagerly at our heroine. The gaze was most intense and earnest. Nothing if not admiring, but a greedy, almost fierce look it was, from eyes that flamed with a fire so fervent that it seemed capable of consuming whom it fell upon. Cleo, who had risen to her feet at the entrance of her visitor, was struck with his appearance and manner, and particularly with his singularly intense gaze, and stood looking at him for a moment in silence, a smile, half curious, half amused, wreathing her lips. At length, however, she said, puffing 2 streams of blue smoke from her nostrils, To what am I indebted for the honor of this visit, Mr. Marvin? The sound of her voice, soft, sweet, and silvery in tone, broke the spell that bound the other, and suddenly, and with a spring almost, he left the spot where he had seemed rooted, and came towards Cleo. Reaching her, he dropped his hat, caught her left hand in both of his, and to her great surprise, kissed it fervently and dropped to his knees before her, his lips pressed to the beautiful member they so passionately kissed. Cleo saw through it in an instant, and with a laugh that rung through the apartment, and which, from its ringing tones, must have penetrated others, dropped into her seat, her hand still held to the lips of the strange visitor, and her laughter increasing. "I know all about it," she said at length, her laughter by no means abated. "That is, I know you are one of my admirers, lovers, and a woman." Falling back in her chair as she spoke, her eyes caught those of Prince in the adjoining apartment, and then a fresh burst of laughter gushed from her lips, which told how infinitely amused she was. Then the face of her visitor was raised to hers, and from the large, dark, and handsome eyes that flamed with the fires of a passion that was consuming their possessor, there shot forth a fierce, hot glance of anger, kindled into being by the laugh of Cleo. "Yes, I am a woman, one of your many lovers, as no doubt you have," exclaimed the stranger, with not a little feeling of bitterness manifested in her tones. "A woman who has dared this, impelled to do it by her love for you, a stranger," continued the confessed woman, still kneeling at Cleo's feet and holding to the latter's hand. "For a bottle you are the one who signed herself May Myrtle," said Cleo, laughing, and trying to disengage her hand, which the other would not relinquish. "I am, and I—" "Mean business," broke in Cleo. "I do, if you call it business. I said what I meant, and meant what I said in those 2 notes I sent you. You wouldn't see me, as I begged, and I resolved to see you. And here I am." "You are pretty determined in this matter, aren't you?" said Cleo in a highly amused tone. "I am," was the reply, and the flash in the eye of the speaker told of desperation, if not determination. "Suppose you seat yourself, miss." "Wait a minute," said the woman in love, and then, in a tone devoid of passion, but replete with an earnestness that carried a far greater weight than would fervency of expression, continued, "I am only one of, perhaps, 100. Here she glanced at the pile of love letters on the table. "In love with you. But I love you better than anyone other can love. I know it. Can you not love me? Look at me. I am handsome and accomplished." "I fear I can't," said Cleo, laughing. "I am not easily impressed. And, besides, I am not marrying a man, my dear." "I don't ask you to marry me," said the young woman, kissing the hand she still retained in hers. "Let me love you. Love me a little if you can, and be—" "Impossible!" ejaculated Cleo, who was getting enough of the singular scene and the strange act then on, and forcing her hand from those of the woman who supplicated her countenance, if not her love, at her feet. "You can be nothing to me," she continued, with not a little severity in her tones, the other then rising from her suppliant position. "You are engaged," said the wooer, in a tone that was calm and cold, but laden with the weight of disappointment. This, bringing as it did her numerous engagements to mind, caused Cleo to laugh heartily, and forgetting her severity, she said, "Engaged? Why, yes, I should say so. I am engaged to a dozen, more or less, and never a one shall I marry." The other looked at her for a moment, with that intense and ardent look with which she had regarded her on entering the apartment, and then said, "Engaged or not, married or not, I am mad with love for you, and my love will not brook contempt, or even indifference. Love you I must. I cannot help it. And follow you I will, till from sheer hopelessness of escape from my persistent pursuit, you surrender to my love, as being the least of 2 evils. Possess you I will, and— That is enough of this," spoke up Cleo, interrupting her persistent suitor. Her tone was severe, and her eyes flashed angrily as she said in continuation, "You must be mad to talk as you do. And now, if you please, you have played your part in this comedy of love. Let the scene change. Excuse my rudeness, but I must request you to retire." Saying this, she got to her feet, when the scene did change immediately. Quick as a flash, the infatuated young woman sprang upon her, and locking her arms about her person, confining them in the close and, to say the least, extremely fervent embrace, kissed and kissed and kissed again the face of the man with whom she was so madly in love, who had excited her passion to a point beyond which was veritable madness. Such a demonstrative way of forcing one's love, or osculatory concomitance, upon another, was not, under the circumstances, particularly relished by our heroine. Had she been a hero, she might have suffered them with resignation, perhaps. And after the first moment of surprise was over, she addressed herself to the effort of releasing herself from her over-ardent admirer, and, being the much more muscular of the two, succeeded at length, but not without considerable effort, in freeing herself from the passionate embrace of the young woman whose mad love had gotten the better of her propriety, discretion, and reason. But no sooner was she free of the close embrace than her hand was again seized by the other, who, covering it with kisses, again went to the floor on bended knees, exclaiming as she knelt, "Oh, I shall die if you spurn my love! I shall die! I shall die! Look at me! I will die!" she cried, springing to her feet, and quicker than thought, pulling forth a pistol from a pocket in her coat. The girl was mad from an excess of the tender passion, at times so tender as to lead to toughest murder, and Cleo saw it, and believed she meant mischief to herself or both, perhaps. If she did, and, no doubt, the infatuated girl, beside herself as she evidently was, would have made some violent, if not deadly, demonstration with the weapon, she had no time to do so, for Cleo was as quick as she, and grasped the hand that held the pistol, before the latter was in position for use, and she held it, too, in a vice-like grasp, in such a way that if it had exploded, neither she nor the other would have been injured. Looking at the infatuated creature for a moment most sternly, thinking undoubtedly of the annoyance she would be subjected to if, indeed, nothing serious resulted from this misplaced attachment, and, wishing to relieve herself of the one and prevent the other, Cleo leaned forward, her visage not only losing its sternness, but assuming a comical expression, and whispered in the ear of the young woman, who, from the moment her hand had been caught, had stood a passive prisoner, moving not at all, but with that intense look of love and passion fixed upon the object that had kindled within her bosom the anything but tender flame that was consuming her. That whisper went into her ear on the warm breath of Cleo, but the effect on her mind was a shock as great as that on her body would have been had ice-cold water been dashed suddenly thereon. In fact, it froze her hot blood immediately, lighting the red roses of love to black ashes of, what shall we say, not hate, but, well, dreadful disappointment, if not disgust. Sudden and tremendous the change that came over the spirit of the dream that had held the young woman for many days and nights, perhaps a hideous nightmare, usurping the place of its rosy predecessor. The expression that came to her face, which paled and flushed by turns, was one that was indescribable, unless we say it was compounded of astonishment, doubt, shame, unbelief, regret, disgust, curiosity, and hate, all of which, and more too, mingled and blended in that look. It was evanescent, however, as the shadow flung on a field of golden grain by a quickly passing cloud. It vanished almost immediately, a deep blush of confusion mantling her face, while from her lips came a scream, not loud, but most expressive of the deepest abashment at having been most egregiously sold. And with that scream, she snatched her hand from Cleo's loosened grasp, and rushed from the room like a bolt from a catapult, leaving her pistol and her hat behind her, and had she not pulled the door shut, would have heard the peals of laughter ringing from Cleo's lips as she rushed on her winding way from the hotel. Her dreams of love dispelled, her burning passion quenched, undoubtedly.
Chapter 35 1. It was some little time before Cleo recovered from the fit of laughter into which she had been thrown by the expressive look and scream, and precipitant flight of the deeply enamored woman, who came so boldly to woo her, who so warmingly wooed, and who fled so ignominiously. But at length she did so, and said to Prince, who entered the apartment the moment the woman fled from it, "Well, Hal, I'm safe from her, May Myrtle. She'll do no mischief on my account. I hope the next time the susceptible creature falls in love, it won't be with one of her own sex." Tickled beyond measure, Cleo again burst into immoderate laughter, the whole scene appearing so ludicrous to her that she could not restrain herself. In fact, she did not try, but laughed loudly and laughed long. The cachinnations caught by Prince, who, though greatly amused, laughed quietly, at length subsided, when the latter said, "I suppose you informed your ardent admirer that she was wasting her sweetness on the desert air. Told her how the land lay, eh?" "Yes, I thought I might as well, as the jig is about up, Hal," returned Cleo. "Besides, there is no knowing what lovers will do when the madness is upon them. They are very erratic and careless at times, and liable to emotional insanity, you know. But it was a pity that so much genuine, though rather hot love, was wasted on one who could not respond, wasn't it?" "A great pity," responded Prince, as though he felt sensibly that waste of tender passion. "I had a good mind to call you and recommend you in my place, as one on whom she could bestow her love to better advantage, repaying more satisfaction. Oh, I didn't want any of it. Thank you, however, for your good mind," said Prince, breaking in upon Cleo, who laughingly said, "Oh, we hear enough, Hal. Make me believe, if you can, that you or any other man would have resisted the passionate onslaught of a pretty woman like her, and declined her love as I did, with a Joseph-like firmness. No, Josephs are scarce nowadays." "Thank God, I know of one in you," said Prince with mock solemnity, looking earnestly at Cleo, who was lighting a cigarette. "Ring the bell, Hal, I'm thirsty," was her response, with no further allusion to Joseph. "So the jig is about up, you think?" said her companion, seating himself after ringing the bell. "Yes, things are getting pretty hot, Hal, and I fear Mrs. Grundy will get them down too fine, and thus rob me of the pleasure of the voluntary exposé on my part. I don't want the old lady to say, 'Aha! I've found you out, I knew it was you.' But I want to give it away myself, and I'll do it at the races tomorrow at Jerome Park. You'll be there to see, of course." "The suspicion is strong, that's a fact, that Cleo Clayton is Don Juan and vice versa," said Prince. "And some go so far as to say they know." "Ah, but they don't, Hal, and that's what's the matter," broke in Cleo. "I know, but accident or design might betray you. Design on the part of some of your devoted female friends, in the interest of propriety and morality, you know." "Yes, I see. But I'll hug them off tomorrow, Hal. The jig has been a lively one. I've seen lots that women never see, and am satisfied, only I won't rob Mrs. Grundy of her satisfaction. She has been fearfully exercised these 3 weeks past, and tomorrow I'll set her way up in the 7th heaven of bliss. Here's to her and her precious crew. Drink it down, Hal, drink it down." The last remark was made as Cleo raised a glass of wine to her lips, a bottle having been brought in by a waiter, to whom she had given the hat and pistol left by her admirer, to be kept by him if not called for. "The account stands thus, Hal," our heroine said, after drinking her second glass of wine. "Thus, on the debit side, Mrs. Grundy shocked, society scandalized, propriety outraged, delicacy discounted, and conventionalism flouted. On the credit side, Sue Martin made happy, Vida Vining saved from a life of shame, if not made happy, which I hope she will be. A young fellow that promises to be a man among men, who would probably have been a thief among thieves, perhaps a couple of lives saved in that carriage, sundries of lesser accounts, sights I should never have seen, and lots of downright fun. Society may balance the account to suit society's views, I care not." "You need not," said Prince, quietly. "And now I shall settle down in petticoats and be never so proper," said our heroine, laughing, and filling the 2 glasses again. Suddenly she asked, looking at Prince with an arch smile, "Do you love me, Hal? I haven't asked you now in a fortnight." "Thou hast quite persuaded me to love," returned he, and she could read in his eyes the confirmation of his words. "Why, you always said no before," she exclaimed with an affected surprise that bordered on dismay. "But I always said I should love you, Cleo, and it has come, love," returned Prince, seriously. "You know that I don't go off at half-cock," he continued, "that I don't tumble into this thing or that thing immediately, and that I never should fall into love, which has grown into my being for you, and wasn't born on sight, as with your late departed lover, May Myrtle." "Let me see," said Cleo, as if trying to remember something. "I believe you once boldly declared you would marry me, did you not?" "I did." "And you didn't love me then?" "Not wholly." "Suppose I should tell you, Hal," said Cleo, quite seriously, "that I promised, only yesterday at that, to marry Mr. Fisher, father's choice, you know." "I should let you tell it," replied Prince, perfectly unconcerned. Well, I did, Hal, and you know I always keep my word. Prince merely nodded. He took no stock in that promise, knew there was a catch in it somewhere. Cleo went on. I was at home yesterday, as you know. Mr. Fisher came. He has called several times without seeing me, and we had a long talk. I felt in the humor, felt that a marriage, after this masquerade, would be highly desirable, you know. He was terribly exercised about what he had heard, asked me point-blank if the rumors and hints and reports he had heard were true about this masquerade business. I replied by asking him if he would marry me if they were true. He unhesitatingly declared he would. Oh, he's a noble man, Hal. I then told him to pay no heed to what he had heard, for people knew not what they said half the time. He pressed his suit. I was yielding, felt, you know, that I could not let slip the opportunity that was mine. Cleo looked very seriously at Prince, who, however, smiled very composedly. He continued his suit, warming up well to the work, encouraged by my manner, and at last squarely popped the dreadful question. With a blush, I know I blushed, I answered, I didn't know you loved me then, Hal. Too late, too late. Our heroine uttered these words in the saddest of tones, with a countenance to match, Prince, smiling and highly amused, and only anxious for the sequel. He grasped my hand, continued Cleo, and imprinted one modest kiss thereon, when I said yes, which was hardly cold when I said, on one condition, Mr. Fisher. He didn't expect an impossible condition. I didn't mean to propose one, and eagerly asked what it was. Much to his surprise, I asked the old gentleman to go upstairs. He went, and I followed, up into the Empyrean. Then I named the conditions, that he should— what do you think? Why, only that he should climb by the rope to the flying trapeze, and perform there for 15 minutes. Only that and nothing more. The old gentleman gave me one look, such a look, and bolted, absolutely flew, out the Empyrean to the mundane below, and shot out of the house before I could get downstairs. And so I lost a husband. Cruel fate! This was too much for Prince, the idea of her asking Mr. Fisher, her husband select by her father, I staid and circumspect gentleman of 50-odd winters, to perform on the flying trapeze, and he exploded with laughter, laughing heartier than Cleo had ever heard him laugh, she joining in with him at the thought of the ridiculous proposition that had cost her a husband. I'd like to have seen him flopping about on that trapeze, said Prince, in the midst of his laughter. It would have been too funny for anything, almost screamed Cleo, whose eyes swam in tears caused by her violent ebullition of mirth, and the laughing pair laughed it out. Restored to a tolerable degree of calmness, Cleo very suddenly put this question to Prince. And would you marry me after this most monstrous masquerade, Hal? Could you? Would I? Why not, pray? Will you have me? That's the question, was his response. Without replying to the question, she said, Oh, but I've been very naughty when alone, been in very naughty places you wouldn't go into, perhaps, that I haven't told you about, and had some what you might call off-color adventures, which you know nothing about. Here Cleo reckoned without her host. Prince knew everything, for he, fearful lest she might be waylaid when out alone, knowing her well-daring spirit would carry her wherever she took a notion to go, had had her shadowed, and the longest time she was out of sight of the shadow was when she was thrust into that hack, he being a trifle behind time in that instance. In short, Hal, I fear I have been very wicked, what with queer places I have visited, queer characters I have mixed with, queer scenes in which I have been an actor, and queer affairs in which I have been particeps criminis. In a deprecating tone these words were uttered, the speaker looking exceedingly contrite, as though she felt the full force of her enormity, and was ready and anxious to do penance in sackcloth and ashes for an indefinite period, in tones and look playing the part of penitent to perfection. "I haven't the slightest doubt of your awful turpitude, Cleo," said Prince solemnly. "But the depravity, diabolical as it was, into which you so recklessly plunged, can be repented, and I am glad to see that you already manifest contrition for the dreadfully wicked course you have of late pursued. Meantime, your answer to my question is in order." This finished the acting. Cleo, dropping the part of the penitent sinner, became herself again, and said with a laugh, "Well, Hal, if you have the moral courage to marry me after this most monstrous masquerade, and take me for better and for worse. Let me see, what was that question? Will you have me to be your husband?" "I will, Hal." Both simultaneously rose to their feet as these words were uttered, Cleo saying instantly, extending her hand, "There's my hand on it." It was warmly grasped by Prince, who imprinted thereon a fervent kiss. As with her suitor of the day before, the kiss was scarcely cold on her hand before she said with a laugh, "On conditions." Prince's brow clouded slightly for an instant, but the shadows vanished, and he, with a laugh, said, "Trapeze?" "Oh no, harder, perhaps," she rejoined. "Name them." "That you wait 5 years," Prince's brow again clouded, for she stopped here. "Or marry me tomorrow," she continued, after a short pause. The cloud passed, and sunshine lightened the face of her lover. "Tomorrow it is," he said, in a pleased tone, and again kissed her hand. "Another, Hal, that no barbarous honeymoon trip, with its railway and hotel horrors, supervenes. Not any for me." "Sensible," was the sententious utterance of Prince. "Any others?" he queried gaily. "None, only that my marriage shall not interfere with my efforts in behalf of Vida." "I am content. Your ways are my ways," said Prince, proud of the noble woman before him, now his fiancée. "Now ring the bell, Hal, and we will seal this engagement. The 12th I have entered into, and the one I'll keep, with a glass of the glorious vintage." "And you will keep this engagement," said Prince, in a tone of mock solicitude, taking Cleo's hand again, after doing as she desired. "Depend," was the response, and then a fond and warm embrace, with mingled kisses sweet, with lovers' vows, and hearts that beat as one, were what did follow the depend. Such, reader, were Cleo's courtship, wooing, winning, and engagement. Just like her, the style, wasn't it?